The morning sun cast its golden light over Mount Sinai Medical Center as the sound of hurried footsteps filled the halls. Emily had arrived early, as always. As the head nurse, she took pride in her work, her long brown hair neatly tied back, and beneath her white coat, a crisp navy dress that reflected her professionalism. "Good morning, Mrs. Brown," a young nurse greeted cheerfully. Emily returned the smile. "Good morning. How is Mr. Thompson doing?" she asked while checking on patients, giving precise instructions with the ease of someone who had spent 2 decades in the field. Her sincerity and dedication had earned the trust of both her colleagues and patients. Taking a brief moment in the break room, she checked her phone. A message from her husband, William, popped up. "I'll be late tonight. Work is piling up." Emily sighed lightly. William's responsibilities as the president of a real estate development company had grown heavier over the years. Still, she replied with understanding. "All right, I'll leave leftovers in the fridge." As she put down her phone, memories of their early years together surfaced. Their high school days, sharing lunch in the schoolyard, her supporting his business dreams while juggling nursing school, every struggle had led to the stability they now had. They cherished their Sundays together, attending church as a family and enjoying brunch at the Cheesecake Factory. Their home in Bal Harbour, a beautiful Mediterranean-style mansion built by her parents, was Emily's pride. Her younger sister, Olivia, was always part of those gatherings, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She worked as a receptionist at a beauty clinic, exuding charm and confidence. Though they maintained a warm relationship on the surface, Emily couldn't shake the occasional unease she felt from Olivia's sharp glances. But she had always chosen to ignore it, holding on to the family values instilled in her since childhood. "Mrs. Brown, the patient in room 3 is calling." A colleague's voice pulled Emily from her thoughts. She took a deep breath, slipping the treasured pen her parents had gifted her, the one she had received the day she became a nurse, back into her coat pocket before heading out to continue her rounds. At that moment, she had no idea that the life she had built so carefully was about to be shattered. That morning started like any other. Emily stood in the kitchen, making coffee as the sunlight streamed in. William, off work for the day, sat at the dining table, flipping through the newspaper. The day before, they had attended church, followed by their usual family lunch at the Cheesecake Factory. Olivia had been in an unusually cheerful mood, celebrating William's latest business success. Emily had noticed but brushed off the vague unease she felt about her sister's excitement. Suddenly, William lowered his newspaper and looked up. His expression was void of warmth. "I want a divorce," he said, his tone as casual as if he were discussing the weather. Emily froze. "What?" "I'm divorcing you," he repeated. Then, with a cold smile, he added, "I'm marrying Olivia." The coffee cup slipped from Emily's hands, crashing onto the white tablecloth, the spreading stain dark and ominous. "You're joking," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't a joke. I've already spoken to my lawyer. The papers are ready." Emily stared at him in disbelief. The man sitting across from her, the man she had built a life with, suddenly felt like a stranger. Images of their past raced through her mind, their late-night study sessions, the nights they spent planning his business, weekend road trips to the Florida Keys, their dreams for the future. And now, it was all crumbling in an instant. Outside, the world carried on as usual. Children laughed and played in the neighboring yard. The Miami sun shone brilliantly. But for Emily, time had stopped. Then, her phone rang. The number on the screen belonged to the police. Her heart pounded as she answered. The words that followed felt like a cruel twist of fate. Her parents had been in an accident on the highway while returning from their usual weekend trip to Key West. Emily gripped the steering wheel as she drove toward the hospital, her vision blurred with tears. A terrible premonition clawed at her heart. When she arrived at the emergency room, the confirmation came. She was too late. Collapsing in the hallway, Emily sobbed uncontrollably. Then, she heard a familiar voice. "Oh, sister. This must be so hard for you." Emily looked up, and there stood Olivia. Despite the funeral setting, Olivia's makeup was flawless, her outfit perfectly put together, her posture elegant. But there was something else beneath her polished appearance, an unnatural brightness in her tone. Beside her, William shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Emily's gaze. And that was when she finally saw it, something about their closeness, their shared glances, something she had been blind to for far too long. The world she had trusted, the life she had cherished, had completely unraveled. The entire community was shrouded in grief. The church overflowed with old family friends and longtime acquaintances, all mourning the tragic loss of Robert and Catherine Brown. Yet amidst the sorrow, Olivia and William seemed oddly detached. Their whispered exchanges, the way Olivia clung to William's arm, it was as if they were merely waiting for the moment to move on. As Emily struggled through the pain of losing her parents, her divorce from William proceeded steadily. She threw herself into her work at Mount Sinai Medical Center, finding solace in caring for her patients. It was the only thing that gave her life a sense of meaning in the midst of such betrayal. Then, one day, an envelope arrived in the mail, thick, glossy, and elegantly printed. Emily hesitated before opening it. Inside, the names William and Olivia gleamed in gold lettering across the front of an elaborate wedding invitation. A 300-person ceremony at the luxurious Aquilina Resort and Spa. Tucked inside was a handwritten note. "Please come. We want you to be the closest witness to our happy moment." It was signed by Olivia. Emily stared at the invitation, her fingers tightening around the paper. Every word dripped with triumph, as if Olivia wanted to twist the knife just a little deeper. Her parents were gone. Her husband had left her for her own sister. And now they wanted her to witness their happiness? But instead of breaking, Emily straightened her shoulders. The teachings her parents had instilled in her rang clearly in her heart. Live righteously. Face the truth with dignity. "I'll go," she whispered to herself, a quiet but firm declaration. The wedding day, the morning sun reflected off the pristine waters as Emily drove toward Aquilina Resort and Spa. She took a deep breath, her grip steady on the wheel. The last time she had taken this road to a wedding venue was 20 years ago, when she had been the bride. Now, she was heading toward a spectacle that felt surreal. The venue was a grand affair, bustling with guests dressed in designer gowns and expensive suits. Everything about the event screamed extravagance. Twice the size of Emily's own wedding, with crystal chandeliers, pristine floral arrangements, and waiters carrying trays of champagne. At the front of it all was Olivia, basking in the attention, playing the role of a fairy tale bride in a dazzling white dress. Church officials and community members surrounded her with congratulations. William stood beside her, but something about his expression was off, an unease that he couldn't quite mask. Emily took her seat quietly in the back row. She could hear the murmurs around her. Poor thing! How brave of her to come! Yet her face remained unreadable. Then, just as the pipe organ filled the grand cathedral with music and Olivia began walking down the aisle, the heavy doors of the venue suddenly burst open. A tall, dignified man with an air of authority stepped forward. His voice carried through the silent hall. "I apologize, but I must interrupt this ceremony." Gasps rippled through the crowd as all eyes turned toward him. "I am James Martin, the executor of the will of the late Robert and Catherine Brown." The venue fell into stunned silence. Emily saw the color drain from Olivia's face. William, too, stood frozen in place. James Martin pulled out an old-fashioned envelope. "Your parents left a will and a final letter," he stated solemnly. He unfolded the letter and began to read. "To our beloved daughter Emily." Martin's voice was steady as he continued. "If you are hearing this, we are no longer in this world. But even if we cannot stand beside you, know that we have always protected you. And we will protect you until the very end." A tremor passed through Olivia's hands as she clutched her bouquet. William's jaw tightened. "We knew everything. Olivia and William's 20 years of betrayal. Their embezzlement of company funds. Their plot to seize our inheritance. Murmurs of confusion turned into shocked exclamations as photos and documents appeared on the massive venue screen. Secret meetings between Olivia and William, spanning 2 decades. Financial records of stolen company funds. Statements from hidden offshore accounts in the Caribbean. It was undeniable proof of their deception. Emily remained motionless, watching as the truth unfolded before the very people Olivia had sought to impress. "This is what true happiness looks like, isn't it?" Olivia's own words to Emily before the ceremony now rang through the air like cruel irony. Tears streaked Olivia's flawless makeup. William's face turned ashen, his legs giving out as he stumbled into a chair. The lawyer wasn't finished. He reached into his case and pulled out another document. "Your parents left detailed instructions regarding the inheritance of their estate," he announced. Olivia visibly stiffened. "The entire estate, amounting to approximately $5 million, will be inherited by Emily. The ownership of the Bal Harbour mansion will also transfer solely to Emily. Olivia's inheritance rights have been fully revoked due to her immoral conduct." A shocked silence filled the room. Then, the real chaos began. The back doors flung open once more, but this time, it wasn't an attorney stepping inside, it was the press. Reporters, cameras flashing, flooded into the venue, capturing every stunned reaction. And behind them, the police arrived. "Evidence of company fund misappropriation has already been submitted to the authorities," Martin continued. Sunlight poured through the stained glass windows, casting eerie colors on Olivia's pristine white dress. The illusion of her fairy tale moment had been shattered beyond repair. Emily slowly stood. She no longer felt sadness. No longer felt betrayed. She simply felt free. The guests erupted into horrified whispers as Olivia collapsed at the altar, sobbing, her grand wedding reduced to an utter disgrace. William, meanwhile, was immediately seized by the authorities. As they handcuffed him, his panicked protests echoed across the venue. 20 years of lies, manipulation, and betrayal, all crumbling in a single moment. A month later, Emily sat in her parents' Mediterranean-style mansion, now her home. The scandal from the wedding had made the front page of the Miami Herald, the images of Olivia's breakdown and William's arrest plastered across the media. As she sorted through her parents' belongings, Emily flipped through an old photo album. A picture from her wedding caught her eye. There she was in her white dress, and right beside her, Olivia, smiling as her bridesmaid. Even back then, behind that smile, the betrayal had already begun. But now, that chapter was closed. With one last glance at the past, Emily shut the album. Then she stepped out onto the balcony, inhaling the salty ocean breeze. She had lost much, but she had gained something even more valuable. Emily closed the old photo album with a deep sigh, her fingers lingering over its worn cover. The past was finally behind her. "Mrs. Brown." Attorney Martin's voice came from the entrance, calm but firm. He held a stack of new documents in his hands. "The investigation into William Clark's company is complete. The misconduct uncovered far exceeds our initial estimates." Emily sat on the living room sofa as Martin laid out the report. Over $1 million had been funneled into hidden offshore accounts in the Caribbean. And Olivia, her involvement is undeniable. The beauty clinic she worked at? It was a front for money laundering. Emily listened, her expression unreadable. She had long suspected there was more to the betrayal, but hearing it confirmed was still unsettling. Additionally, the company's shares have already been transferred to you. The new board of directors has officially named you chairwoman, recognizing your integrity and leadership experience from the medical field. Emily exhaled, looking out the window. The Miami sun warmed the garden outside, just as it always had. "My parents saw through everything," she murmured, a mix of sadness and admiration in her voice. Life at Mount Sinai Medical Center slowly returned to normal, but something had changed. The way people looked at Emily was different, not with pity, but with respect. "Mrs. Brown, you made an excellent decision," a senior doctor told her one afternoon. "Your strength is an inspiration to all of us." The words touched Emily deeply. She now fully understood what her parents had always taught her. Living righteously wasn't just about enduring hardships. It was about standing up, moving forward, and making things right. On weekends, Emily returned to the church. She sat in her usual seat, offering quiet prayers. The congregation welcomed her warmly. No one mentioned Olivia or William. Everyone knew the truth, and there was nothing more to say. "Emily, would you consider chairing next Sunday's charity event?" An old acquaintance asked her as she left the church one afternoon. Emily nodded with a smile. "I'd love to." Meanwhile, William and Olivia had gone their separate ways. William had been indicted for corporate embezzlement. His trial was ongoing, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Olivia, implicated in money laundering, was under investigation as an accomplice. Their grand wedding, once meant to be their crowning achievement, had ended in utter disgrace. One evening, Emily stood before the framed photographs of her parents in her home. "Mom, Dad," she whispered, "I'm all right. In fact, I feel like I've finally found myself again." A soft breeze drifted in from the open window. Outside, the world moved forward, just as she was learning to do. A year later, Emily's life had taken an unexpected turn. As chairwoman, she had begun reforming the company, steering it toward an entirely new purpose. Her medical experience and newfound role in real estate development had merged into something meaningful, constructing medical facilities that truly put patients first. At Mount Sinai Medical Center, the newest pediatric ward gleamed under the Miami morning sun. The state-of-the-art facility had been her dream project, realized through her parents' inheritance and her own expertise. "Mrs. Brown, the television crew has arrived," her secretary informed her. Local media had taken great interest in the ward's grand opening. As the cameras rolled, Emily spoke with quiet confidence. "This ward is my way of honoring my parents," she said. "They taught me the true meaning of living righteously. And I want to bring that lesson into everything I do." In one of the hospital rooms, a young girl battling cancer smiled as she gazed out the window. The room had been designed with her in mind, a comforting, healing space with a view of the lush garden Emily had personally helped plan. A church acquaintance approached Emily, her eyes glistening. "We are so lucky to have such a wonderful facility in our community," she said. "Your parents would be so proud." Emily smiled. True to those words, her life had changed dramatically in the past year. The company, once tainted by corruption, had been reborn as a leader in medical facility development. Its ethical, patient-centered approach had set a new standard in the industry. Meanwhile, William had received a 10-year prison sentence. Olivia, after receiving a suspended sentence, had moved to the West Coast. Emily no longer kept track of them. Their chapter in her life had ended. On weekends, Emily drove to the Florida Keys, a place of fond memories. But now, she traveled alone, allowing the sea breeze to wash away the last remnants of the past. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she took out her phone, checking an email from the hospital staff. A new pediatric project was already in motion. She was using her skills to build something bigger than herself. "A new morning is beginning again," Emily whispered, her eyes reflecting a strength and serenity that had once felt impossible. Driving back home to Bal Harbour, she was greeted by warm smiles from her neighbors. In her garden, the rosebuds she had planted months ago were beginning to bloom. They, too, were proof of a new beginning. Emily had chosen to move forward, leaving the past where it belonged. Standing before the framed photographs of her parents, she softly whispered, "Mom, Dad, please watch over me." On the morning of the pediatric ward's grand opening, she felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. The daughter her parents had protected was now capable of protecting countless others. The ceremony was a major event, attended by regional medical professionals, business leaders, and political figures, all gathered to celebrate the birth of a groundbreaking healthcare facility. When Emily took the stage, her speech captivated the audience. She spoke not only of innovation in medical care but also of the intersection between healthcare and ethical real estate development. "This project is just the beginning," she declared with unwavering conviction. We will continue to do everything in our power to improve people's health and happiness. The applause was thunderous. The vision she had shared resonated with all who had gathered. A life of purpose back home in Bal Harbour, Emily's garden had transformed over the past year. The roses she had planted as a symbol of renewal now stood in full bloom, vibrant and strong. They had become the centerpiece of her sanctuary, a daily reminder of how far she had come. On holidays, Emily immersed herself in local charity work, using her own experiences to inspire those struggling with life's hardships. One afternoon, as she volunteered at a hospital event, a veteran nurse approached her. I never imagined such wonderful changes could happen, the woman said, admiration in her eyes. Your journey has become a lesson for all of us. Emily met her gaze with a quiet, knowing smile. Perhaps life has hidden gifts for us all, she replied. As the Miami sunset cast a golden hue over the hospital's windows, Emily sat at her desk, reviewing plans for her next project. The following year, she would oversee the development of a comprehensive care facility for the elderly, a place that prioritized dignity, quality, and compassion. With every step forward, she honored her parents' legacy, channeling their wisdom and love into the work she now devoted herself to. She gazed out at the evening sky, her heart steady, her path clear. New dreams are always right before us, she whispered. Her eyes shone with a brilliance unlike ever before, a light that only those who had truly known love, loss, and justice could possess.